it's great to have everybody on. So the way this kind of evolved is, so Maria Giacomatos, her book Midnight Waltz just released from Evolved. And so I wanted to do something for her, and I started reading it, and it's like a cool haunted house mystery with ghosts. And I'm also reading Rachel Aaron's Hell for Hire, which is coming out
June 4th.
June 4th. So pretty close to now. So I'm like, hey, this is kind of similar because demons and witches and haunted, all kinds of supernatural warfare. And Mercedes Yardley is an old friend, is just a fascinating person with brilliant stories. So the intro that I made has got some of the book titles that you've written, and one of hers is Apocalyptic Montessa and Nuclear Lulu. Is that right?
A Tale of Atomic Love, yes.
Yes, a tale of
Awesome
atomic
title.
love.
It is the longest title in the world, and I screw it up every time. So
I've seen that title many times today already, and I still messed it up. So
it's tough, yeah.
How would you
Best of luck.
How do you even characterize? So like A Tale of Atomic Love, like how would you, if someone said, wow, I heard you got this really long title for a story, what's it about? What would you say?
I say it's Streetwise Romeo and Juliet meets Firestarter.
Certainly is.
Basically is.
That's cool.
It's a love story with serial killers, I guess. And
yes, it's explosive for sure. So Firestarter is an excellent word picture for that. And also Mercedes, her newest book is Darling, which is a small town horror with a very questionable supernatural element. So like the whole time you're kind of questioning, is it supernatural or is it just weird? And it kind of revolves around some abductions of children and who's at fault for that. And so here we are together, all of us with our and then so my God's Knife Revolt is just an insect apocalypse in Iowa. So there you go. That's weird. And here we are. My daughter was dressing up as one of the characters from A Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And it made me think about how that's kind of like the formula for urban fantasy almost, where like the lion, the hero, the witch, the villain, and then the wardrobe is kind of like that borderline that maybe if you look at it the right way, you can go through and Harry Potter and whatnot. But for me, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was more of an inspiration earlier in my life. And so it just it made me think the things that I loved about that story are similar to what I love about urban fantasy, because we have not only the hero and the villain, but that very questionable line between reality and magic. And so in urban fantasy, we get to play with that. So I thought we could talk a little bit about that with each of your releases. Maria, do you mind going first? So for your release, Midnight Waltz, how would you introduce The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe for that story?
So I guess for the lion, the heroes, it would, I guess, obviously be the protagonist. We got Anthony, who's just kind of this regular teenage boy that gets kind of jumped into a whole bunch of supernatural chaos. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. That's my bird. Oh my God. Rowley.
That is hilarious.
That's my favorite thing today.
Okay. He went somewhere else. So yeah, sorry. Okay, so for protagonists, we're being heroes. And okay, someone else go first. I need to.
So, Rachel, your book I'm reading right now, Hell for Hire. The cover. So, do you have the book next to you? I'm gonna show that.
I do.
Again, I love this cover. So, how did you come up with even just the cover? Because are you like full indie on this release?
I am. I did. I started my career with Orbit Books, and they're awesome. Like, no shade at all to them. I just am a very controlling person who really wanted to be in control of my own releases. And that's the entire reason I went indie. That, and I was at a convention, and John Hartness, who is another indie author, was at a table right next to mine. And I discovered he was making like 4 times what I was making on like half the sales. And I was like, I'm in the wrong business, you know? So that was a big actually inspiration to me going indie. And I have never regretted it. I really, really love doing my own stuff, but that's not what we're talking about. But I did this whole thing myself. We're doing hardcovers through Ingram.
Nice.
And that was a big learning process. Actually, you see, I have many hardcovers behind me that did not turn out well. These are practice hardcovers. But
Wow.
but yeah, I actually specifically did and I don't know if there's going to be video on this or if people are going to listen to it as a podcast, but this book is screaming yellow. It is a very yellow book.
Yeah.
And I actually did that on purpose because when you look at, I've written urban fantasy for a really long time. And when you look at urban fantasy, especially modern urban fantasy, and you look at the bookshelf, it's all black, blue, purple, green. That's the colors. And so I'm like, well, the opposite of all those colors on the color wheel is yellow, orange. And so I'm going to do a yellow book because I want it to pop. I want it to jump off the page. And I specifically went to my artist and I was like, give me screaming yellow and let's do a superhero type cover. And she did a fantastic job. And then I did the typography because in my past life, I was a graphic designer before before I decided to like write books. And very great entry career to being an author, by the way. Graphic designer, web designer, fantastic entry point. But yeah, to answer your question about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which by the way, never occurred to me that that was urban fantasy until you mentioned it. But you're totally right, because it's magic in the modern world, which is kind of the definition of urban fantasy, which is really fun. That, you know, because it's not like, you know, and it's not like Anne Rice invented it or anything, you know, or Dresden invented urban fantasy. It's the idea has been around for a very long time of what if magical things in our world and other world stories. So I think that was really neat. Unfortunately, my book does not fit your metaphor at all, because within this book, every character in here is already inside the secret world. There's no normal human characters, I think, at all. It's the story of a witch who is from a whole bunch of a coven of witches who have been basically forced into their forest by the holy king Gilgamesh, who's the king of heaven, who killed the gods and took over everything 5,000 years ago, and has basically banished magic from our real world. And normal people can't even see magic. They have scales over their eyes that prevent them from seeing magic even when it's happening right in front of them. And so the people who are not part of this kind of magical blackout are the characters in the book, one of whom, Bex, who's the badass lady on the cover. That's the other reason I chose yellow. My cover is literally a girl in black leather with a sword. That's every urban fantasy cover that has ever been. And I was like, we have to do something different. Not because I don't like those covers. Obviously, I did girl in black leather with sword. But I just wanted, you know, to stand out from the crowd. Anyway, but the story is truly about outsiders. And it's a rebellion story about rebelling against basically a fascist takeover of heaven, where the whole world, the magical world, is now completely under the rule of one person and one man's vision. And it is not a vision that allows for any sort of things that are not within his agenda. And there's a lot of combat, there's a talking cat, there's talking swords, it's very fun. But I actually read a ton of C.S. Lewis as a kid. Like, he was one of my favorite authors as a child, which I'm pretty sure was actually my mom's sneaky way to make me more Christian. But didn't really work, but I really liked C.S. Lewis. And so I don't know if you've actually read his book, Till We Have Faces, but that is a fantastic book and actually one of the inspirations. So we're still on the C.S. Lewis train, just a different track.
Yeah, well, so I've read I'm past the halfway mark in Help for Hire, and so the way it starts out, it is I like the scales part because it does kind of it still has that feel of the urban fantasy where we are just getting a really close up first person view of the other side.
Yeah, it's
But
still a
like,
secret world, but
yeah,
we're in it.
yes, it's much more open. So if my metaphor doesn't work at all for yours, Mercedes, that's okay. I appreciate how everybody just twists everything all up. Your story, darling, is very personal, and I mean I know because I know you and your family. So I already know like how it was inspired, I'm sure, to an extent. But you're very busy, so you've got I mean your short stories. You're a Bram Stoker winner, correct?
Yes.
For that, and you work with Gamut magazine with all that. And so every time we get a novel from you, it's really special to me. And so when it comes out, I have to get it. And so I'm curious with because we all have so limited time for our art. What made you feel like Darling had to be written? And maybe did you know like it was going to be a novel from the beginning, or did it start as a short story?
Darling, I wrote a really long time ago before things got quite as busy, and it was just too personal to finish, and then it was too personal to release it. And if you guys read it, it just it doesn't really seem that personal, but it really is. It's very very dear to my heart. One of my son, who is a beautiful child with a disability, is one of the main characters in there, and the other was based on my daughter. And I had lost I was pregnant with triplets and lost two of them, and so it's and the other is she turns 13 next month. But so it was very tough writing. It was very emotional and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was a story. I just saw the characters, and the way the story started for me is I don't know if you guys listen to Placebo, but they have this song called Follow the Cops Back Home. And I was just driving one day in my car and I was listening to it, and that song came on, and I just had this like vision in my head of these two people that are absolutely broken, just like walking down a dirt road, and they were just broken. They were in poverty. They were just this dusty road. And I actually had to pull my car over because I was like, I need to write this story. I don't even know what it's about, but that's the scene that I had. That's the scene I started with. So I knew it was going to be a novel. I like novels. I have one that I am shopping soon, but for me, I am a little too busy, and I tend to do everyone else's work before mine. So I'll do Gamut before I'll like do my work, or people will be like, will you write a short story for me? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I'll, do 12 short stories before I work on my novel again. And I'm trying to kind of prioritize novel writing a little bit more, but short stories are also, they're so fun, and they're so quick in a way, and I can go through lots of characters and scenarios and that sort of thing. And I really like to do that because a novel is, you go much deeper, and I really love that. But short stories are kind of like, it takes your quick ideas that are all bubbles and shiny, and you can hurry and do them. And a novel is more time. So, but I would like to focus more on my novel writing. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the heroine in your story for Darling, and how then she became the focus, and then maybe how that even worked in with the town of
Okay.
Darling.
Well, first I have to say, Tim, I know you really struggled reading Darlene. I know it was really bleak and dark, and I love that you powered through it. I appreciate that so much because it's dark. It has all the trigger warnings just straight off. But so the character, her name is Cherry, and she is very unlikable. I wanted her to be unlikable. She was living in a small town. I come from a small town where everyone knows everyone's business. And so I wanted her to be in this kind of small town where you feel like the town itself is infused with evil. You feel like it's very, Southern Gothic in that way, where the town is very sentient itself. And Cherry gets pregnant at 16 with Ephraim, who's this like, kind of town golden boy, and they escape. And then the child is born with a disability, and Ephraim just leaves her because most marriages with a disabled child end up in divorce, but he just leaves her at the get-go. And so she ends up with 2 children and moves back to the town because she has to. And she moves back to her mother, who passed away, to her old house. And she hates this house. It's a house of abuse, right? But she's there and she's trying to learn how to be a mother in a town where some people are helpful and she doesn't trust them. And then also where there's an evil outside. There's something skittering across a roof at night. People change, become uglier and darker, and the town kind of starts to eat itself alive. And meanwhile, pieces of children are turning up in the town, and you don't know what's influencing that. You don't know who, the murderer is, and everyone accuses everyone else. It's really dark, but it's also, I think, quite lovely, and there's a lot of redemptive aspects to it. But yeah, it's definitely probably the bleakest thing I ever have written. But I love it so dearly. I was in a bleak place when I wrote it too, but to me it's a happy ending, but maybe that's not to everyone that it's a happy.
Is it cathartic? Is that like the ending?
I don't know if it's cathartic.
Because a lot of times, like, I don't read a lot of horror, but when I do, I love that, like, that feeling of being afraid and then pushing through it and getting that catharsis at the end of like overcoming the evil. So
I don't know how much.
I haven't read it, but it sounds really cool.
I won't spoil her, but I don't know how evil is overcome. I mean, some of it maybe, but there's always more, I don't know. And I think I would like it to be a series, maybe. I'm thinking about, but I hate to write series, so it might not be.
They're the best though.
I don't like them. I wrote book 1 of what was supposed to be a trilogy, and it was supposed to be a trilogy because my now defunct publishing company sold it as a trilogy without my say-so. And so I had to do it. But wait, there's more, last chapter. And that's been, I think that came out in 2014. And I'm like, I just don't want to do more because you told me I had to. But I love the characters. I've written the final 2 books twice and I'm just not happy with them. So we'll see.
That is fair. And also great integrity. Props.
Thanks.
Oh no, I didn't know that you wrote the next 2 books twice. That's hard.
Yeah, they're lame. They're just lame. They're not what I think those characters would do.
Well, I really enjoyed Nameless, and
Thank you.
I get it though. My God's Knife book came out in 2015, and I was kind of new to writing, and I guess I just didn't really know how to organize my massive world building. And so it was just really hard to come up with what happens next and how does it extrapolate. But
it's hard. They actually, Nameless was my first novel that ever came out. My short story collection came out first, but they released Nameless, and I didn't sign the contract until after it was released. I didn't know they were releasing it. I thought they were looking at it to release it, and they're like, here it goes. And I was like, what is this? What just happened here? Like, my book released and you told me like the day before. It was kind of exciting and mostly a nightmare. You know what I mean? Like, oh, yeah, it was. Anyway, that company does not exist anymore. Crystal Lake Publishing bought Nameless in those books too when that all went down. But yeah, publishing is not for the weak. It is not for the faint-hearted.
My books. So I'm new with Evolve Publishing, but I had a publisher before for my first 2 books, and then I was getting ready to release the 3rd, and then my old publishing company just I had to find a publisher who would re-release my first 2 books and then the next 2, which was a pain in the butt. But I'm with Evolve now, and they were willing to, republish my first 2 books with, some edits and changes and whatnot. And we're getting the 3rd one. So right now, Midnight Waltz like literally just came out. The print copy is like just got released, and the ebook's been out for a little bit. We're getting ready to release the 2nd one, and then we'll have a nice new release first time release for the third book and then working on the fourth and final book. But yeah, I totally agree. Like the series, like I at least planned to have a series of 4 books, but like the first 2, I was like, okay, I got this. And then like, I don't know, like, and again, these were my first published works anyway, but like people had like expectations and they're like, you know, okay, the first 2 were so good. What's going to happen in the third? And I'm like, no, I mean, I know, but like, I hope it meets what you want. Cause like, I'm writing obviously what I want to write, but now I have like a base of people who want this story. It's not like, you know, okay, here's a new book, new ideas. It's, you know, they're continuing this series with these characters. And well, I like that, you know, I like my characters obviously, and I like the plot, but it's just getting to like the final book now. It's like, okay, you know, wrapping this up is trying to meet these expectations of feeling like, you know, oh, I already like, you know, if I like one of my other books better, I'm like, how can I make this better? If, like, you know what I mean, right? Like,
Exactly what you
it feels like there's a lot of pressure
Yes.
there. And I'm probably going to do another series after because I don't know, I like going like deep into the worlds and the characters, but 4 books, I don't know if it's going to be 4 books next time because it's just a lot to commit to and to deliver with.
Right. It's not your work anymore. It's everyone else. So I don't know if you guys have heard Trent Reznor from 9 Inch Nails talk about art and how he feels about art. And he says, you know, all these people are participating in your art and they shouldn't be. It's your art. You should be able to create what you want, but they're like, you should do this and you should do this. And now artists kind of are swayed by what people are saying about their art. And he's like, no, you shouldn't. But then it's Trent Reznor. So he, you know, rebels against that. But I love that because it's like you get very strong opinions on your books and very strong opinions on where you have let them down, you know, and it's wonderful to have people so invested. It's really exciting and connecting, but it's also like, I don't think I knew that was going to be the case when I first started writing.
Right. Yeah, I actually, I've had the exact same thing. So this book right here, One Good Dragon Deserves Another, which is the sequel to Nice Dragons Finish Last, which is probably the book people know me best for. Like it's probably my most, I actually think it has, well, I don't know the numbers, but it's definitely the book I feel like I'm currently most famous for. But this book almost didn't get written. It took me 18 months to write this book because I was trying to write the book people were telling me they wanted. And that was not the book that needed to be written. And I almost quit. I just couldn't get something. I'm like, this is not good. It's never good enough. It's never. And so I just stopped playing to the gallery. David Bowie said, don't play to the gallery. And I just wrote the book that I wanted to write. And now it is one of my highest reviewed best books. Everyone's like, it's genius. We love it. I'm like, I did nothing you asked. But I always do the Henry Ford quote, which is, if I asked customers what they wanted, I would have built a faster horse, you know. And you just gotta, but you're absolutely right that that fear. And I've written at this point, I'm gonna date myself here, but I've written 25 books. And but it's the same problem every time. Because these are your readers and you want to give them what they want. They love you and they've supported you and you're like, I want to give you all good things in life. But you just got to do it that these stupid people want you to do. Not the readers, but the stupid characters.
The characters.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I say the character, they drive the story. I have my outline, but
broken people.
If they want to go another direction, I'm like, okay, that's where we're going. And you know, luckily people have enjoyed it. So far, everyone's been like, your second book sucks. I like the first one better. And, you know, of the beta readers that read the third book, I mean, I haven't had a huge audience on it yet, obviously, but like they seemed to like the direction I went. So crossing my fingers. I just like, you know, you always hear about like, you know, people who read like a series and they're like, oh, it was so good, but then like don't read after the third book because then it just gets bad. And like that is
my nightmare.
That's my nightmare. Yeah, I'm like, please don't say that about my books, especially since I go in such a different direction in the third book. Because again, I had that idea, but I'm like, shoot, is this what people are gonna like? Like, so fingers crossed that they like it. Sorry to getting a little off track, Tim.
No, this is the
Um,
track. This is amazing.
This is the track. Sorry, this is now a video about the fears of writing a series.
I think that's valid. And I think a lot of readers don't realize that, and I think that people think that they're giving us constructive criticism. Like, if you're in a book group and they're like, well, I emailed the author everything that they should change about this book. And it's like, I love that you're thinking of us, right? I love that you think that doesn't fit or whatever, but that book is written and published. Like, I'm not going to go back and it's done. I think people kind of don't understand the way that all of that works. And, that book went through edits 2 years ago and now it's out, and the time to give us constructive criticism has gone. I just kind of think people don't understand the fear and kind of don't understand what it's like to be an author a little bit, because I sure didn't when I was a reader. I was just voracious. I'm like, just pump those books out because I want them now. I'm so invested. I love them so much. And now I'm like, oh yeah, that takes time. Like, that's staying up late at night and skipping dinner and okay. I can give them time.
So my problem was because I write a ton of series. Like, I love series. I love to read series. I don't think I've never written anything that's not a series, except for one book that I was paid to write that was meant to be a series and then didn't do well enough and never got made into a series. But anyway, long story short. But one of the things that I get all the time is people asking me to continue my series. Like, my very first series that was the one that got me my book deal, which is The Legend of Eli Monpress, is 5 books long. I mean, these are 5 fantasy books. These are some doorstops. These are not small novels. And people like, what are we getting, like, book 6? And I'm like, no, it's done.
Yeah, no, it's wild. Like,
left.
my series isn't even fully out, and I have people, because I was pretty forward with when I was like advertising in book 1, like, it's gonna be a 4-part series. It's the Infernal Symphony. A symphony is 4 parts. I signed on my contract. It's 4 books. And people were like, okay, but for your next series, is it going to be related? Are you going to do more? I'm like, I put on a contract that I'm done at 4, even if I wanted to. I don't know if I could, but like, I'm ready to start something new. Like, I'm already like writing, like, I'm working on my 4th book. Yeah. But I'm also on the side working on like a new book for a new series. Because that's
how it goes.
honestly less scary to write right now than like the grand finale. But yeah, it's like, I've dedicated so much of my life to this series and it's great, but it's got to end somewhere, because then it just turns into, you got like, dare I say, like, the Harry Potter series. They just keep milking out side stories and musicals, and it's like, who asked for this?
Story of Dumbledore's
It's just a money grab at this point. Not that I'm making that as much money nearly, but it's like, I don't know. It just feels like you got to move on eventually.
And I think this is especially true that readers don't understand for authors, because for them, they read the book and it was great, but it was like 8 hours to 10 hours of their time. Whereas this was
several years.
Yeah, this was like a year of my life. I am through being in this place. I want to be in a different place.
They didn't have to reread and re-edit the book a million times. I'm like, I memorized the book at this point. Like,
there are entire sections I can quote verbatim of books
especially since
years ago.
I've had to like revisit my first 2 books again, which I never.
Oh, because you got them republished. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, we're gonna re-edit, and you got to relook at it. I'm like, I just want to be done.
I closed the door.
Like an ex-boyfriend or an ex, girlfriend. Like, yeah,
right.
That passed. I'd like to close that door and move on.
So I mean, I guess I kind of had the chance to change some things. Like, obviously the plot didn't wildly change. It's more just like, let's make the sentence prettier and stuff. Like, I think there's only maybe like 1 scene that changed of like, the whole combined 500, 600 pages of the 2 books. But no, I have readers that I think thought about it more than I did in their 8 hours of reading. Like, it was like my 2nd year at a convention that I was vending at, Seattle's Crypticon. This girl comes up to my table, like, God, she had to have been about like 13. The book is loaded with sticky notes on like her theories, which was awesome to see. I'm just like, oh God, your ideas were better than mine. I'm sorry, I didn't actually go that direction.
I don't know.
Thanks for putting in all that thought.
Someone came up to me with the sticky notes, because that has also happened to me, and my stomach just drops. Because I'm like, what did you find? what did I get wrong? Because
Right.
I try so hard, but I'm only human. And also books are kind of
Exactly.
like, they're like a diorama. You know, they're meant to be
Yeah.
looked at from the POV that you're in. And when you start turning them, and I try to make everything, I try to really make the world airtight, but you can't think of everything. And
No.
I've had people point stuff out where I'm like, that is a very good point that I really should have thought of about 3 years ago. You know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, right? So anyway.
Yeah, hire that person to like be a
Oh,
continuity editor, you know? Like I can't
Seriously.
remember what color everyone's eyes are. You know, I'm
Right.
like, I have to go back and look and I should put it in a log or something. And I just don't. That's not how I work. I'm very
Control F,
scattered moment,
Control
you
F,
know. What?
Control F. I just keep my old Word documents open and just look. I just go find things.
I started doing that because once we
Yeah,
got to book 3, I was like, all right, I need to keep
never
things sort of
trust,
consistent.
never trust your memory. It's a
Oh
liar.
no. No, I would never.
I was
I
actually
had to get into that. Anyway, sorry, continue.
I was using your 10K to 2K book, Rachel.
Ooh, I'm really
So
happy to have this shelf here. It's so convenient.
yes, I have listened to that book multiple times and found uniquely helpful for, I don't know if I would call something writer's block, but just that fear of writing. Because a lot of times I I have 1,000 ideas and no energy to choose which one. And so like world building can just be um, chaotic, and preparing a novel is chaotic. So I often just start as soon as I can press the gas. Um, but so your book has like steps 1, 2, and 3, and essentially writing out what you know about the book, and then the next step is now let's start to build from that with some more details about different characters and setting and whatnot. And so I just found that to be very helpful. And everyone that I meet who's a writer that has fear of writing, I recommend your book and say
Yeah.
this really helped me to just show me a direction to start putting my energy. And so today I was just sitting on the
It's
porch
not a big book.
writing.
This is definitely not a big book. Well, I thank you. I'm glad it really helped you out. And but one of the things I really tried, and it makes my heart sing to hear you say that, because the thing that I tried to do with this writing book was I tried to make practical advice, like advice you could actually use. Because I read a lot of writing books because I like writing, but I read a lot of books and a lot of them are very vague. Like it's very inspiring to read, but it's something I can use. And so when I figured out my 2K to 10K method, I felt like I cured cancer because I literally doubled my word counts. I was writing twice as many words in the same amount of time, which at the time, my son was a baby and I was paying for sitting so I could write. So like being able to write within my time was very, very important. And 2K to 10K came out of what I had to learn to, and I still use it. I still, the methods in this book, I still use them to this day. Every day I sit down to write, I do my little thing or I sketch out my scene and I'm like, I'm going to write about this today. And then 9 times out of 10 will write about something completely different. But just thinking about the problem helped me figure out the direction I needed to go. And it made everything faster because when you're trying to solve problems while you're in the prose, oh, it's so awful. And you can go down a 500 word dead end that takes you an hour because you're struggling with every word. And I'm like, I don't want that life anymore. I'm not about it. So I use 2K 10K as that. This is how I write. If you want to know how Rachel Aaron writes, right here, this guy will teach you. So there you go. Promo.
Nice.
I'm
Yes.
done now.
Well earned promo.
Thank you.
I didn't want you to have to say it, so I said it, and then you said it better. Okay.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I actually I kind of get like I'm at the point now where I've got a lot of books and I'm always like I should do more promo, I should be more out there, but I like writing. Like I get into this for writing, not for advertising. And one of the things people tell you, oh, when you self-publish, you're going to have to be all this advertising. And that is true, but it's not nearly as much as people say. Like I still largely live as a recluse who sits in a cave and spits out books. Um, so it gets a little tricky, but you learn to live with it. You learn to balance it. It works out. Though, Mercedes, your story about publishers made me kind of happy I'm over here.
I am delighted that you're over there doing so well. Yeah, it's a nightmare to have to bow to the whims of other people. Because I just, and you're like, I wanted earlier you said I want to be in control of my books. I want to be in control of that. I don't. I just want to write stories, man. I want maybe input on the cover. I just want to hand it over to I just want to write and hand it over to somebody else. And so when they fail you, you're like, oh no, I should learn how to do this myself. But then it's like, help, I'm drowning. I'm just a writer, and learning the marketing and all of that is so different. It's really fascinating and interesting, and I like it, but I don't want to spend my time doing it because I have so little time to write. I have 3 kids. I volunteer all the time. Like, I'm gone all the time. I'm on like 3 different boards of things. Writing is so precious, and to spend that time like looking up how to do formatting or something, I don't like that. I don't.
Yeah, and that is a totally 100% valid way to do. Like so many self-published people are like, why are you still with your publisher? And people are different. Everyone's got different goals for their career and different things that they can do that are within kind of their ability to do without driving yourself insane. And for me, I like marketing. I wanted to be a cover designer. That was actually like my dream job before I got into writing. Like, I really wanted to work and design covers. And honestly, a big part of why I got into self-publishing was to live my dream of being an art director. But it's not for everyone, and there is no one size fits all. And I think it is a lie to tell people that one is better than the other, because everyone's career is different and not everyone is in it to be their own boss. Like, that's not what everybody wants. And some people find that very difficult to wrap their heads around, that not everyone wants to do things the way that I do things.
And I feel like nowadays too, so many publishers, unless you go with like, one of those like big 5 houses, like you got to do a lot of your own marketing anyway. I mean, Evolved, obviously, I mean, I don't think I would be here if I wasn't with Evolved. That's how I got connected with Tim, which is great. But, I'm still expected to post, on my Instagram and my Facebook and all that. Sure, they'll post sub stuff too. And some people be like, oh, she's, published with Evolved. I know this other author who's good. And, so there's like some reputation there, which helps, but only so much. Like, if I walk down the street, like, not everyone doesn't know what Evolved Publishing is. And so there's a lot that I got to do on my end still, but they help with the formatting, with actually getting it out in the world somewhere, and hooking me up with editors and cover artists who are reputable. So, they do a lot of the work that I don't want to do. Like Mercedes said, I just want to write my story, and I just want someone to validate that it doesn't suck before it hits a shelf. So I'm perfectly happy with what I have right now. I know authors who, have done, self-publishing or small press, and then they got into the big guys, and they're like, oh my God, they're telling me I got to like cut this stuff out of my story. They're telling me I got to change this. And it's just like, I don't know, like, tell me to change things because it doesn't work for the story. Don't just be like, oh, we're changing it for the sake of, we don't want that in there, because arbitrary.
And I was published by Orbit, which is Big 5. And again, love them. They're great. Davey Pillai, my editor for life. But that was really what kicked me, because I'm a contrary person. And if you're like, do this, I'm like, make me.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't matter if it's a good idea. I just don't want to do it. Just contrary. And, I literally got told, not by my editor, by someone else, that I should keep my day job. And I'm like,
Yeah.
But that's just me. I mean, that's like it. Everyone's different, and I couldn't take it, so I left the kitchen. I couldn't take the heat, so I got out of the kitchen. And but I'll tell you, the thing I really, really miss is you cannot hire an editor, no matter how much money you pay. You cannot hire an editor who is of the quality of the editors you get who work for publishing companies, big publishing companies, small publishing companies. The editors that you get from companies whose job it is to make books that sell, to put out books that sell, that quality, the editor who chooses you as opposed to the editor you chose when you paid them, The quality of editing that I got there made me the author I am today. I would not be the author I was today if I hadn't started in trad. And so there's a lot of value, and I actually am very seriously considering going back to a smaller press because I want to get the stuff I want to do that I just can't do on my own. And it is lonely to go it all by yourself. Like my husband helps me a lot with my publish, so I can actually write books. I don't sit here doing publishing work all the time. And but he spent the entire last week trying to figure out how to self-publish our audiobooks to wide channels. And I'm like, there was a world where I didn't have to think about this, you know. So anyway. But yeah, but you can do really cool things. Like I decided I wanted a hardback. I got myself a hardback. I have never been published in hardback, and I made myself a hardback.
Nice.
And I really like it. This is my new favorite thing. It's so pretty.
Can I see that? Can I see that again, Rachel? Can you show what's the spine look like without the cover on it?
Oh, I did them real cool because I love it when you take the jackets off. There's stuff.
Yeah, it looks cool.
So, although it kind of looks like a 1970s book now.
Yeah.
But I thought it's so cool. It feels really nice, and Ingram does a good job. They print pretty much every book in America anyway, so they do a good job. Yeah, it's my new shiny, and I'm very excited.
Yeah. Well, you should be. I just had quite a shock what I was reading today, and it was the floor fell out a little bit, so that was good. I don't want to reveal any more than that.
Oh, and Hell for Hire?
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta brag on this thing a little. So I wrote this book. Every now and then I'm like, I'm gonna write a new book, and I just like barf that book out. Like it's done in like 3 weeks. And then I spend months editing it and making it not barf. This is a beautiful illustration of our craft here. And but Hell for Hire was one of those books, and those books always turn into my best books, like the ones I was like on fire for. And I was on fire for this one, and I just love this whole cast and crew. I was actually planning to write something like a fantasy, something very different for urban fantasy, because urban fantasy is kind of, as a genre, has become very paranormal. Like there haven't been a lot of big hits that are just straight urban fantasy. Like the world has kind of moved on, and I'm still here in urban fantasy doing what I've always done. And so I was like, I should do something different. And now what do? Black leather with sword. That's what I do. But it was really fun. I had a really good time. And I think that I got to really dig into some stuff with this book. And I, you know, honestly, compared to y'all, I write very, very fluffy books. There's, you know, we still dig into deep themes, but it's always a happy ending. You know, the good guys win. So
that being said, I do want to backpedal a little since I had to temporarily leave when my bird invaded.
Oh, you never answered the question.
I never actually talked about my book. I don't know if I should do that.
Yes. Yes, Maria. So tell us a little bit about Midnight Waltz. So you've said that there's fans with sticky notes, and the first thing I thought of was probably the Eden family. I'm wondering if there's a lot of world building in that direction. So tell us a little bit about how your heroes are involved with this Eden family.
All right, so going with I'll try to loop it in with that lion, witch, and wardrobe thing, which I thought was a clever thought. I was like, oh yeah, it's like the heroes, the villains of the world. So like I was saying before, the feathers got on screen. We start out pretty, normal world. We got this boy, Anthony. He's just a regular guy, just trying to get through life, trying to get through high school. His crush just rejected him. And he and his friends, they go to this haunted house, this old abandoned-ish haunted house where, there's like ghost stories about, oh, there's like the girl who died there. She wakes up at midnight of the full moon and we're gonna go see if we can find her. And of course the house is, owned by Olivia's family, his crush. So he's like, okay, well, that's awkward, but let's go. Why not? And he kind of splits off from his friends, and then that's where he finds Emily, the undead girl who died there, and she's awake, and they kind of just start vibing, and they kind of, she died in like what, 1910 or something, but they have some similarities with, they both are kind of trapped in their own homes. They have rough family life. Well, I mean, her family's dead, but she had a rough life
Right.
growing up there, and he has a current rough family life. So, they kind of bond over this trauma. And then literally they get jumped by this group of like paranormal investigator, they're, as I often describe, as ass-kicking, demon-fighting exorcists from this group called Eden. And of course, his crush Olivia is like, her dad is like the owner of the company. And they're like, hey, yeah, she's undead. This chick's undead. We're gonna help her get her soul back. It's been taken by this cult of evil demons summoning mages called Lucifer's Disciples. So I guess those would be the witches. I mean, there's some very specific baddies that come out. Like there's this kid with like possessed by a demon named Rundle, and he's like the main bad guy, because I don't know, I wanted a kid to be the bad guy. He's actually, what in the original draft, I think he was like supposed to look like a 10-year-old, but then he got aged up to like look like the same age as Emily, which is like 14. But I kept not thinking that, so he acts very childish and is described as very childish because I kept picturing like a prepubescent child. So I don't know, but so yeah, they have like her soul, and they're like holding it hostage because it gets into this whole thing about, oh well, we want her brother to like join us and stuff, and they're like, well, her brother died in 1910, and then it's because of this whole thing of like, oh, your brother's undead too, and it's all this crazy stuff. And like, yeah, on the surface it's all like, paranormal, supernatural shenanigans, because that's what I'm into. I mean, I'm out here like, give me more, give me all of the paranormal. But it has very human struggles, I guess, too. Like, yeah, there's demons, and it's like, there's like monsters and like vampiric demons and stuff, but it's all kind of like this symbolic of, like abuse that we go through in life, whether it's like physical abuse or drug abuse. And the characters, the main characters are teenagers, our main lions, and it's sort of a coming of age in a way of they're growing up and they're learning how to deal with these problems, and they're learning how to deal with it without their families. Their families oftentimes are the cause of these problems. The wardrobe, I guess. What's the wardrobe again? Explain the wardrobe analogy.
The weak point. Where it's the split between what's normal and the paranormal, I guess.
Right. Okay. So yeah, all of it is happening in almost broad daylight. I guess you could almost even say that the house itself is that split. Yeah, on the surface it's very supernatural. You got, undead people there. You got, I mean, I don't want to say too much, you got to read the book, but there's all this creepy stuff that has happened in the house that is, paranormal for sure. But I think the horror that it has created for the characters is a lot more realistic. It's, again, it's very much a story of like trauma, overcoming trauma that, a lot of people have experienced traumatic events with their own families and their own homes, and kind of learning like how to get through that.
Sure. So it's Anthony. Is that
Yeah.
his name? I'm like, it can't be Anthony, because my main character is Anthony, and then Rachel's got Adrian, and I think, and I'm listening to.
It's the letter A. It's right there.
Anyway, so Anthony are his parents dead? Is that what happened? Or
it doesn't. I didn't go into super big detail, but it's mentioned, I think, that they're incarcerated. I didn't go into specifics. So then I'm like, okay, well then someone's gonna go in and be on. Actually, they should have only been in jail for this long. So it's you know, it's they're incarcerated, and he's living with his aunt and uncle, who are also they're not great people.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like used to be very into academics and school, and he's kind of just like stopped caring about things, which is a very normal thing that a lot of people go through when they're dealing with like hardships at home. It kind of makes everything around you seem like, what's the point? Um,
Yeah.
and then, his life is very not supernatural until he gets involved with Emily and Eden. But you've got these characters kind of going through the same thing, like, his crush Olivia. She's like, her family is all up in the supernatural. She's like, I just want a normal life. This sucks. Where, Anthony's like, nah, this is an escape for me now. The normal life kind of sucks. And then Emily's just like, what year is it?
Oh, you sold me.
Emily's a trip. Nice.
And then, of
Well,
course, all the other characters have their own things going on too, which again is what I like about a series, is you have time to go into each character's backstory, and obviously some more than others. And it was fun for me too, because when I started the book, I wrote it when I was in middle school, high school, just for fun for my friends. And I was like, the same age, if not younger than most of them. And now I'm older than even the like adult characters. I'm just like, bruh. So it gives me a lot more like perspective on like rounding out the struggle, because I mean it's personal, but now it's like I know how it would typically resolve. I know how these resolved for me, what I went through, and kind of going back and giving that it's just more well-rounded than just being straight up angsty. It's there's that teen angst and rage, but it's channeled.
Right,
sure.
with like an adult's overview, an adult's
Yeah.
in.
I was reading Anthony's scene. It hooked me because so for me in the last 4 years, chronic pain and multiple back surgeries has really thrown me for a loop, and I'm disabled, and just everything is hard. I see how my kids suffer because of that, and then I saw Anthony and how he's suffering, and he's living with his aunt and uncle, and they're one of the descriptions you said, they come home from work and get drunk and don't care. And it's just like, for me, I'm not drunk, but I am in so much pain that it may seem like I don't care, like I'm not there. And so like,
Right.
just for me, so that hooked me into Anthony, and we just wanted to share. So it's been
Oh, well, thank you.
enjoyable to see him, and that's a small thing, but it's the
It's relatable.
yeah,
And
it's
even
like
if it's not
it's the
relatable to you,
aspect of the wardrobe in
yeah,
a sense.
it's relatable to at least someone if it's not you. And you get kind of the similar thing with Olivia as the story goes on. It's like, she's not very close with any of her families. They're like, they're too busy for me. They don't, and I'm the youngest. My older siblings already got, positions of power in Eden. There's nothing for me. I'm just like, she's just kind of there. Which, as you later learn, it's like, it's not really the case though. But so it gives you, I try to give a lot of that perspective of like how a teenager feels, how I used to feel in situations like that, of feeling like, you're ignored and now you're left to do things on your own. And you feel like it's because no one cares. That's not always the case. And eventually you learn that, the adults around you are broken too. Everyone is flawed. And we're all just trying to figure things out.
Yeah, we're all just trying to read books instead of
Trying to read and write
suffering.
books, but I still have my day jobs, and
But without broken people, there would be no books. So
exactly. And there would be no people to relate to those books. So
yeah. Though
I'd say,
you did. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, Rachel, go ahead.
I was gonna say I actually would like to revise my answer, because hearing Maria talk about it, I realized I answered this question wrong. With The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, in the book I'm supposed to be talking about, not all the books I have talked about, the lion in my case are actually the demon and witch characters. I have a witch and I have a demon who's leading a kind of a revolutionary crew. She's basically leading a crew of mercenaries who were revolutionaries before a bunch of stuff happened, and they were kind of forced to go on the lam. And of course the witch is actually the golden king of heaven, who can do no wrong and who only wants what is best for you. And so it's this very fun like switch. It's a juxtaposition. And I didn't, when I was writing it, I was just having fun. And everyone's like, well, the demons are like the good guys, and I'm like, yes. And I didn't really
I'm
think
just
that
trying to
was gonna be an
explain.
issue, but it is.
Yeah, that was fun. And going into like my second book, when you have good guy demons and trying to explain to my Christian parents why this works and this is okay.
I like that your Christian parents read your books. My mom's a librarian and she doesn't read.
They didn't get super, they read the first one and they're like, okay. And then when they got to the second, my mom didn't even finish the second one. My dad suffered, but he finished the second one. And neither of them have read the third one. I don't think it will fly over well, because kind of like the direction you went, it's like, you know, the angels, God, and those people aren't always the good guys, and they kind of do some sketchy things.
I am very lucky. My mom is one of my biggest fans. She's read every single thing I have ever written, and she's super proud. So that did a huge amount for me as an author. And you know, I dedicated a book to her. I'm very grateful for her support. But my favorite relative reads my book story was my grandfather. So he didn't really understand what I had written, like, because he wasn't really aware of fantasy as a genre,
Yeah.
science fiction as a genre. But he read my books and did not really understand. And he bought a ton of them and would carry them in his walker. He had one of those walkers with little chair you could sit in, and he would put them in the seat, and he would hand them out to people he met
that's
randomly.
precious.
And he would be like, "This is my granddaughter. She writes science books." And I'm like, "Science fiction." Very
Bit different, but yeah.
But it was great that he tried.
Yeah, my dad was I mean, I'm not saying he's not supportive anymore,
Yeah.
but he was pretty, but you know, when my first book came out, my parents were like, oh my God, my daughter wrote a book. Don't ask what it's about, but she wrote a book. He you guys aren't, I don't think you guys aren't Washington natives. I don't.
No,
No,
but I
my
lived.
book is
Okay, so my dad, he used to work in this
set in
grocery store.
Seattle.
Oh, well, there you go. Well,
I
I am from
visited.
Washington area. I say Seattle. I'm not actually from like Seattle, like, you know, 30 minutes out. But my dad worked at a grocery store in kind of Hicktown area, sort of.
Few
And
hours.
he's like, which, you know, I'm like, all right. But he's like, everyone loved him there. I mean, he's a great guy. How can you not love my dad? But he was working at that grocery store for, you know, I think since before I was born. So, you know, everyone's like, oh, his daughter wrote a book. She could do a book signing at the grocery store. And so, like, so many people bought the book that day. Like, I sold out of my stock that I had of, you know, the original release of Midnight Waltz. And it's all these like old people coming through, and they're like, oh, it's Gus's daughter, we'll buy the book. And I'm just like, you're not my target audience, but okay, sure,
It's
we'll
so
take
sweet,
it.
though.
It's
So
very
nice.
sweet. And then the second book was coming out, and he's like, I don't know how to sell this to the same people that bought the first one, because it, you know, it took a lot more of a step to the left with, you know, more demons are actually good, and there's homosexuality, which is not what they do in Maple Valley. So
Gosh, girls.
like, you know, you don't have to sell this for me, Dad.
It's so sweet that he wants to, though.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate the support.
But I get it. I grew up in small town Utah. You know, I'm a
Yeah.
horror. No one buys my books. Like I said, my mom, the librarian, won't even put them in the library. She's like, why don't you write some nice Christian fiction? And I'm like, that's, you know, and I, you know, I am a person of faith. I practice my faith, right? But that's just not that where I'm from. That's just not my target audience either, you know. And they're kind of like, well, it's kind of cool, you write, I guess, you sinner. Like,
Yeah, I get that response a lot. Like my mom's like, why don't you write like a children's book? Because I work with kids in the daytime, and I'm like, if I write a children's book, it's gonna be children's horror. And
yeah,
it's gonna
right.
be like Coraline level, like, it's only children's horror because there's no like boobies or bad words.
Yeah,
But there could,
I grew up in Georgia, so same kind of thing. But I grew up in town Atlanta, so I can't really say any, but all my family is from like Calhoun and out in the boonies. And so there was definitely a lot, especially when I wrote a book that had sex. That
oh,
was, oh, I mean, full on. Like that was definitely some younger.
oh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my family, they're Greek immigrants. I mean, we're talking like from like little village Greece. So, you know, I always joke, I'm like, well, you took me to church and everyone's saying that, like, there's nothing scarier than like the devil and going to hell. I'm like, okay, let's take note on that. Okay, we'll make that a story.
Horror, got it.
Yeah. So
well, I think that's why so many people that grew up with religious upbringings are so good at fantasy and sci-fi and horror. Because we grew up believing or being told or being surrounded by people that believe the ultimate evil wants your soul personally.
yeah,
And I
terrifying.
think that makes for great genre fiction, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I went to
Add,
yeah, well, I went to when I was younger, I went to a big pagan festival in Atlanta called it was at Dragon Hills, which if you ever want to have the greatest time with some of the coolest people, that was a wacky
Awesome.
place and I really enjoyed it. And but everyone there was either Episcopalian or Catholic before they became pagan. It was like 100% of people.
That
And
checks out.
and you see a lot of formerly religious people or
Yeah.
people who are still religious in sci-fi, fantasy, urban fantasy, horror, in genre. And
Yeah, especially with like old world Christianity. You got these like dudes in robes and they're chanting and there's all this
yeah,
this is
it's
the
just like there's
blood.
already a mystical layer on the world, so
Yeah.
it's not a big jump.
No.
right. And horror especially, right? Because that's my sweet spot. I love it because it is the ultimate exploration of good versus evil. I mean, that is what horror is, right? There's always some evil entity and always someone like, I can fight against it. And can you or can you not? It depends. But I mean, that good versus evil, like that is ingrained in a lot of people from, a religious community, whatever it is, growing up. And so I love that people are like, well, how did you venture from this into horror? And it's like, well, it's there. Have you
That
read?
was right there.
Did you read the Bible? It is there, and I love that. I love that we can take like backgrounds, the same backgrounds, and like go off in different groups with different things, all being raised with similar ideas. I love that about people. I love the sociology of that.
Well, I just love how so many people can take so many different things from the same text or from the same upbringing or the same lessons, and we can all go different directions.
Right.
That's actually one of my favorite things about being a writer is every writer they can all approach good versus evil entirely differently. Like you'd be, oh, my book's about good versus evil, and it sounds like, oh, so is every book, but they're all still different, and there are so many different ways to approach any given problem. Like I swear to God, I've written every single book I write. My villains all kind of are different faces of selfishness and different, and it's not like my books are all the same, but it's just there are so many answers to these questions. And a huge part of why, I mean, I'm very biased, but I think writing is one of the greatest arts because you can delve so much deeper into things than say film because you are literally in the reader's head. Like I'm in there with you like a voice talking. And you can get so much deeper into a person than any other art form can because there's a movie is still coming in your ears, but a book is in your head, comes straight in through those eyeballs. So I think it's a fantastic medium, especially for things like horror. Because I could never write horror because I'm just not that good at creating that scary tension. I'm quite frankly a little too fluffy of a person. I guess I can't get that dark, but I love to read it because it's so it gets in you. It gets in you and it gets deep down and it makes you really think about yourself and think about the people around you in different ways. So
I just wrote this story, came out not too long ago in a book called Parallel Lines, but it's called Holding Hands Like Paper Dolls. And it's a what if story about the Manson family. It's like, what if Charles Manson didn't like the Beatles? Because this whole, creepy crawly thing was based on Helter Skelter. So what if he didn't like the Beatles? What would he be obsessed with? And it was there are only two stories I've written that I've ever had nightmares about. One was Little Dead Red, which is about a girl that was murdered based on Little Red Riding Hood, but it could be very real. It's very modern day. And then this Manson family one, because I used like scripture that I grew up with that I still cherish and treasure. But I was like, how would someone use that to back themselves up evilly? So he's like trying to like kill his group and he's using scripture to reinforce it. And I'm like, these are words I love being used in a way that you can use them to promote anything. You can find whatever you want to promote and find a way to like find a scripture to back that up in some way, and it was just like, it freaked me out. But I loved also that I was using something that I grew up with that was precious to me, but using it in a completely different subversive way. And it can go both ways, like, oh, this can make me feel better, or it can be horrible and evil. And it was just, I really enjoyed doing that, but it's scary, I had nightmares about it because I was trying to, I won't say humanize them because I think they were all terrible, awful people. But I was trying to explain why a 14-year-old girl would stay with them versus running away. There had to be reasons that people stayed with them. And so I tried to explore that, but yeah.
The whole thing about, me finishing and whatever, it was hard because it is so hard. She is suffering and you can feel it on every page. And it was like, with every good story, there's a mystery that you're trying to, resolve. And so I was driven to see what the mystery was going to be, but also to see her survive, and the question on if it was a good ending or not, and whatever. Not going to spoil, but there is a sense of relief because the story's done, and I experienced that with her, and life's not easy, so it's good to, like Rachel was saying, we're really into that person's head when they're going through suffering, and like for Rachel, like, why not? What would it be like to try and set free demons? And who's that person like? So I want to read that, and Maria's like this boy who's got a crush, and okay, so now my crush's family owns the haunted house down the street, whatever. So all kinds of fun things. It's been over an hour, so I don't want to go too much farther, but thank you ladies for taking time for this. I will let you know all the details. Anything that you'd like to say before we go? Anything that I'm missing, or announcements?
I have one. I have a short story collection coming out this September. It's called Love is a Crematorium, and I am so excited for it. It's coming out from Cemetery Dance, which is, one of my white whales. So I'm so excited to publish them. But yeah, so this September, Love is a Crematorium and Other Stories.
You have the best titles. Those
Thank
titles
you.
are amazing. I have severe title jealousy right now.
I love that title, worked out. Some of them I'm just like, but this one, it fits. And it's a sad story, Tim. It will make you cry. But it's beautiful.
So it's like Tuesday then, or
it's like every day. Yeah, everything. Everything right. Yeah.
I guess
Awesome.
My announcement is Midnight Waltz is finally available again as a print and ebook, and check it out. And stay tuned because the next book, Adagio for the Fallen, is gonna be coming right out probably in the next month or so, since that one just needs a re-release. And then sometime before the end of the year, the third one will be here too. So I don't know if you're gonna have like our websites or social media plugged somewhere, but
yeah, I'll put links in the show notes for
Perfect.
everybody's websites and books.
Awesome.
Sure.
Yeah, I gotta say, y'all are a tough act to follow. My book's just called Help or Hire, which is not nearly as cool a title.
I love it.
I
Oh,
think it's a
thanks.
great title.
It's green yellow. Look at that. Look at that
Oh,
hardback.
yellow. I love it. I also just like bright colors. But it is coming out June 4th, so in like 2 weeks, and it is available in ebook, Kindle Unlimited, print, hardback, and audio. And let me tell you, the audio is super good. We got a really awesome dude. He acted the hell out of this book. He did sound effects. It's like a radio drama. I love it. I hate it when
Oh.
audiobooks just like sound almost like an AI is reading it. And it's not. It's a
Mhm.
person reading in a very measured tone. So as not to drag you out of the story. But I like it when they ham it up. And so he really did it. And I just think it is perfect. And he did a fantastic job. So the audiobook will be out. Everything is out on June 4th.
Excellent.
Yeah, he's got to ham it up, Rachel. I mean, it's great. I don't know, is spoof the right word? Like, it's a spoof on urban fantasy. Like, it's just, it's
It's a spoof, but it's definitely a lighter urban fantasy. Everything I write is like kind of a comedy almost, because my favorite thing is funny people in very serious situations. So like the
Yeah.
people are funny, but the situation is deadly. And so a lot of the tension comes from watching these hot messes attempt to navigate these into the world scenarios. And it's it's a hell of a lot of fun. So
well, you
Great
said it
job.
better than me. No offense by the spoof aspect, because right,
oh no,
it's very serious, but it's also very
I
lighthearted
mean
and
there's a talking cat. It can't be that serious.
yeah.
I try to write serious and it just doesn't work. I can't be serious for more than like 10 seconds, so everything turns out pretty goofy.
Yeah, actually,
There's
I
a fight
did.
scene in a Hot Topic, so
I love that. I have to
Should
read this
be.
book now. I have to. That is amazing.
yeah, it's a good selling point.
You should just put
Just
that in
started with that.
as your pull line. There's a fight scene in a Hot Topic.
I really
Buy my
should.
book.
We are a marketing team for you, Maria. We're gonna do this.
Right.
All right.
Sponsor me, Hot Topic.
Well, thanks again, ladies. I will see you soon and be reading all your books. So have a great
Thank
evening.
you.
Thanks
Yeah,
for inviting us.
So nice to meet you guys.
So nice to meet
Likewise.
y'all too. Y'all are amazing.
This is fun.
Also, your bird is adorable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bird.
Adorable.
All right, well, y'all.